Hi, it's Will from Elevate Wholesale. Today in Chewing the Channel, we'll be talking to the Chief Revenue Officer of Elevate, Andy Tatlock, discussing his journey into sales, his progression side of things, but then also his view of the market and why we rebranded. So, Andy, thank you for sitting opposite me. I know it's a big honour for you, so that's appreciated.
Been looking forward to this.
Yeah, well, we managed to get in your diary. It wasn't the easiest of things. You're a busy man.
Squeezed you in.
What I want to do is put you in a few uncomfortable positions. We'll talk about your career. It's quite an interesting career because you look about 22, but obviously you've been through quite a bit in your career.
Yeah, not bad for 25.
I know. I think I'm about twice your age, which is depressing sometimes. You know, when you sat opposite someone that's more successful, younger, better looking, you feel inadequate, but luckily I can push through. So kind of where you began, obviously we won't go from your childhood, but before you got into sales, and when I say sales, I mean career sales, 9 to 5. You did probably the hardest sales job around, where if you don't sell, you don't eat, you don't pay the rent and things like that. Obviously there's a lot of fun, but a lot of people won't know that you kind of cut your teeth formatively. Can we say it? Should we say it?
Go for it.
In Malia.
So we've gone there straight away.
We've gone there straight away.
Straight to Malia.
100%.
Okay, that's fine.
This is majority Malia with a little bit of telecoms
I
at the end.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So I did Malia for a week and it took me a good month to recover.
On holiday?
On holiday.
Lad's holiday.
Yeah. 3 of us in a room with 1 double bed, 1 single bed.
Yeah.
It wasn't great. You did, how long did you do Malia?
2 summers. So
2
3 or
summers,
4 months,
3 or 4 months at a time.
Yeah.
How did that come about then? Was that like a holiday and you wanted to stay longer, or?
So, we're going back 17 years, but I mean, these were the best, like at the time, it's the best time that you could possibly imagine. So we did, obviously in between uni years, it was kind of get a bit of a summer job, go back home, or, do you go abroad and kind of see what that's all about. So I did it twice. So we did obviously Malia in Crete. There was like 3 or 4 of us that went the first time, as in from our friendship group. And then the second summer there was about 15 that kind of all went out.
So you've done the first year, then you've recruited.
Yeah. And then everyone's like, we want to have a bit of that. And for me, those were 2 of the best summers, but I could probably turn it into some, this is what it taught me about B2B sales bollocks, but it's a group of guys,
It's interesting you say that, because some of the best salespeople I've ever worked with have worked in the sort of industry where you've got to get people into a bar, or you've got to sell chips on holiday.
If you think about it, you're going away to a different country with your mates with not a lot of cash in your pocket. You get off a plane. It's not like when you're going on holiday and you kind of, where you're going, you're staying somewhere for 2 weeks, you have a good time and you come home. The minute you step off the plane, you've got no job or nowhere to stay, right? Now, it's not that difficult to find those things, but you have to go out looking for it, and this started with, I remember me and my mate, we went together. There was just 2 of us at the start. We went out, you're knocking on bar to bar, basically during the day whilst they're cleaning the places, asking if they've got any jobs. We went really, really early in the summer. So it would have been probably late May, early June, something like that. So it's not really busy, but that's how they're recruiting people. So, if we hadn't done that and kind of gone out and knocked on those doors and spoken to those people.
Getting the plane back.
And we always said, listen, if you haven't got a job within 2 or 3 weeks, you're coming home as well. And if you look at what we were doing, it's, to your point, you kind of, if you're working over there, you're either working behind the bar or you're kind of working on the street, kind of getting people in. I was behind the bar for both times. A couple of my mates were doing.
How long was an average day? Because a lot of people, because certainly from my era, you grew up watching club raps and things like that.
1830s.
And it was 1830s and it was, but behind that sits a different life in terms of the hours worked and things like that. So what's a typical day?
So we would start work at, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, finish work at 3 in the morning, and then you'd go out till 6, 7 a.m. and then you go to bed, then you get up at 3 p.m. So we've been there for like 3 months, and people would be saying, have you just got here because you just, white as a ghost, you've had no time because you've just stayed in. That was mainly the first year, and then the second year we tried to make the most of it. But it's an interesting experience. It helped me a lot because you meet a lot of new people. You meet. It sounds like, looking back, you're sitting in a bar and you're chatting to people all night, and it sounds really, really easy, but you've got to have the confidence to do some of those things, right? And I think some people do go over there and they don't enjoy it because, or any of these places, because either they don't have the confidence or they just don't really want to put themselves out there. And that's everyone's different. And I think it's some of those things that ultimately do then help you, I guess, going into your sales career. I think a lot of the people that we went with and a lot of the people I met there have kind of gone into some kind of role where they're putting themselves out there to one degree or another from a sales perspective.
Because there's no safety net, and I think it's important, if you go into something, you go in.
Yeah,
if that makes sense, rather than
100%.
If your bar struggles,
but if you see it, it's not just Malia was. As much as you're obsessed about it, and I absolutely love it. Malia was
I just try and live vicariously.
Very different to your holidays, I suspect. The Malia was an amazing time, but you see it now with people traveling. People go and do, and I did it, right? You go, you finish uni, you don't want to really get a job, or you don't know what you want to do, and you go out there and you move to Australia or Thailand.
What was your degree in?
Business and Management Studies. So I went to Leeds Met, and there was about 20,000 people on this course. It was real kind of.
Do you think anyone because sales is everyone, there's a certain views on sales, like anyone can do it, or it's just to follow a formula and stuff. And, at your level, have you ever come across a senior leader, and we'll go back to the start, but that's had a degree that shows some sort of line into where their career went? My degree was in politics, for example, and I was always going to go into sales.
It's a strange one, isn't it? Because, if I think from my personal experience, you finish in college, you have an idea kind of what you want to do. And then if you don't know what you want to do, people typically find themselves in like business and management studies. That's how I saw it. It was kind of, I want to be a vet, I want to do this, I want to do this. And then there's this catch-all in the middle, which is why that course was so big. And I remember it came to uni application time, and it was like, I went to a few, there's like Aston University, it's a pretty good business university, the Midlands. I went to it and I just thought, I'm just not going to fit in particularly well here. I just didn't feel that warm to it. And, I had like 10 mates going to Leeds Met, and I just followed them, basically. It was like, at the time.
I'm noticing a trend here then. So university, followed your mates there. Yeah. Malia, followed your mates there. Well, let's just remember that one. Let's carry on.
Yeah. But it's, you're, at that time, I placed the next couple of years was important from an education perspective, but at the same time, I wanted to have a good time and enjoy it whilst we were there. And I guess it's a bit different because I'm from Manchester. A lot of people would go to Manchester uni or my Met or whatever, but because I was from there, I'm 20 minutes from the city centre. I wanted to go away, but somewhere where I thought I could go to uni, I could do the education side, but still the social side. And, you're far enough away from home, but
still come back to watch Man United. Yeah. Obviously, they'll
get your washing done and stuff at the time as a scruffy student, I suppose. But
similar logic with me.
But I think from a uni perspective, it's different, isn't it? Because how many successful people don't go to uni? It's people. I look at it now, and the only thing that I took from that, I think, from an education and a career perspective, was the fact that to get onto the sales recruitment kind of course I went through, you needed a degree of any kind of level, right? So if I hadn't got the degree, I wouldn't have gotten that, and I wouldn't have got the role, and so on and so on and so on. But that same company now does it without needing a degree. So their times have changed as well.
Yeah, I'll touch on that, but a quick question's popped into my head. For your career going into sales, obviously you needed the degree. And I have to keep mentioning Malia because we'll go back to it vicariously. What was better for you entering a sales career, picking up the phone rejection and stuff, 3 years at university doing business management, business change, 2 summers in Malia?
In terms of actual kind of life experience, you would say it's Mali, right? In terms of going out there, and as I said, I've done other traveling that I would put in the exact same category. In that, going to university and doing something like business and management studies, you learn a whole bunch of business frameworks and strategies and all this type of stuff that's very kind of textbook.
Has that helped more in your career once you've gone into leadership?
I don't think so. Honestly, I don't think so. I think the thing for me when I started my career, and it all depends on where you go and what company you're at, and you've worked at businesses of various sizes, but when I started my sales career, my proper sales career, it was a business of 21, 22 people at the time, and a room that's probably twice the size of this, and the CEO sat there.
Boiler room.
Yeah, the CEO sat there, the MD's sat there, and it's like, there's your laptop, there's your phone, off you go, and you're making cold calls in front of people like that. And, that's a really, when you start, we kind of, we call that the eat shit role, right? You used to at the time, you knew that you had to do it for 12, 18 months. It'd make you a better salesperson. You get grounded, you get used to people telling you to do one.
It's difficult as
objection handling.
You're making the calls and you feel like no one else is talking in the room.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's utter silence, isn't it? And then you see, I mean, I think I was good enough at that, in a sense of, I created opportunities, I got business, I progressed, I didn't get sacked, was an important point at that time.
Yeah, hopefully we can say the same.
Exactly. Well, depending on how this goes.
Yeah,
but you look at it and it's kind of, people throw themselves into it. And for us, it was like, and we have it now, don't we, right? We speak to people. It's as much about how they're trying to do it as to what they're doing. You're just looking for people to throw themselves into it. And I had to do that, and the other people who started at the same time.
What were you doing it for? When you first got into sales, was it cash for weekend night out, or were you even at that stage thinking, 21 people in this business, there's opportunity?
I don't think I was thinking that far ahead. I think I came out of uni, no idea what I wanted to do. I had a degree that was the same as 20,000 other people just at my uni. Like, you extrapolate that across the country. No idea really where I wanted to go with that, and kind of went traveling, did that, came home, stumbled upon Pareto, sales recruitment, put my name down, do an assessment day. Assessment day, the next day you get a call, it's like, do you want this job? Do you want this job? And I think that was important to me. I remember you kind of getting calls and it's like, we sell insurance and all this type of stuff. And because I didn't look at it as if to say, this is the start of my career, I'm just going to do something because I need to do something. And it just had to be better. And then I always remember Pareto rang me and said, there's this guy and he's beaming internet from the sky into Manchester. And I was like, sounds pretty interesting. Massively wrong in terms of like the technology and how all that actually ended working out, but that was just their representation of the business at the time. So I was like, I'll have a bit of that. Obviously,
bit of a hook, isn't it?
Well, it's just something different.
Whoever it was as a recruiter has got that hook, and then that's hooked you in.
Just something a bit different. So then obviously got the interview and did 11 years there in different guises.
So this is the bit that I think is quite interesting. So I don't think I've ever told you this. So when you joined Elevate probably 2-3 weeks before me, I don't really know you. I'd seen you on a podcast for a startup you'd worked at where it was a different type of electricity or something. The beer still tastes the same. It's a good line. You'd obviously picked that up from your hustling days. But some of the research I did, which is we kind of want to touch on, was Andy's brilliant guy, was ready and keen to progress, but sometimes people's perception, because of your age in terms of our industry, you're very different to what's out there in the industry. There's a lot of, we can go there, 50, 60, 70-year-old men, and, set in their ways, set processes, and it can be a little bit of a closed shop. Yeah. And obviously your journey, you were ready for it, but at some points, in terms of the research I've done, you were held back a little bit with he's a bit young and things like that, which probably explains why you progressed within the same company, because the options externally in the telco sector then particularly would have been limited for you, because you would have been pigeonholed to certain things. I mean, is that fair, kind of what the perception?
I'd say earlier on, as I was younger, probably yes. But, you know, I think my career, one of the most important parts of my career was what I talked about before and where I joined at that starting point, and I guess the people I worked for at that time, right? In that I joined a business that was very raw, brilliant culture, but like if you fucked up, the whole company knew instantly, because that was just how everyone learned, right? You know, if someone made a mistake, everyone learned from that mistake, and that was pretty brutal in that if you did make a mistake, you were like, everyone was going to know about it, but then you benefited from the experience of everyone else in seeing kind of the mistakes that they'd made or what had gone well. And, you know, that was whilst that was quite brutal, it was still also then very fair in its reward and how they treated people generally. So I had the benefit of, I guess, working in a business that was on an upwards trajectory and contributing towards that as well, I feel. But
in that environment where it's one of those things I always look back, because I, you know, not quite as similar, but your upbringing in terms of sales, if you make a mistake previously, it was, you were told in no uncertain terms, and at the time you might not have felt the benefit of that, but then when you look back, you think, actually that's given me a resilience that
but if you,
that was needed.
I'm sure we'll come on to it, but if you look at Elevate, Wholesale, and, you know, you and I, to your point, we joined very, you know, a couple of weeks of each other. I always said from the starting position of that, just start trading with partners. You know, we're kind of, you're going to learn. We might get some stuff wrong, and we definitely have got some stuff wrong. But, you know, the beauty of working in the channel and wholesale is you're never short of feedback, typically from partners in its
very true.
In its rawest form, right? And whilst you don't want to do things whilst you're unprepared for them, because that's not fair on them or their business and their customers, when you were a business like ours that historically had worked with partners but never really differentiated, and we wouldn't sit here and say they had a channel, for us to have a channel now that we've got, which, you know, you've done a great job getting to.
So I didn't quite hear that bit.
Yeah,
sorry.
You've done a great job.
Thank you.
You know, you just have to start doing stuff a little bit.
Do you think though that approach, that where you're, and everything you say I agree with, was in there, but coming from a small business that grew with a small business, and a lot of Elevate's partners are kind of in that 5, 10, 15, 25 stage, you can kill yourself by wanting to be perfect with a product or a strategy or a sales strategy or whatever that may be. And you'd plan it and plan it and plan it and plan it. Do you think your kind of background coming up through effectively, not a startup, but not a million miles away, is giving you that
100%?
Let's just crack on.
But I think you'll see this, right? I would like to think that typically I don't really hesitate with stuff. Like, you know, it's like, let's just do it, you know, too much to the probably displeasure of you and probably other people sometimes that I work with, in that, you know, it's like, well, we're not ready yet, or it's not perfect, or it's this. And for me, it's just kind of like, I'd rather just do it and gauge the reaction and get the feedback and kind of, I guess, iterate from there, rather than just sit there textbooking it to death and then not really doing it. And in the business that I was, I guess, growing up in, you know, we had a really good proposition, you know, really good people, but you were kind of like flying by the seats of your pants a little bit. You were riding bigger opportunities, and then got bigger, and you always found yourself in an area that you were kind of doing stuff for the first time individually, but then also probably that business was. And I think that's what we've experienced.
That's one of the, you know, again, kind of a lot of our partners and other people's partners, there's this sort of, if you add a string to your bow as a business, there's a big risk, but potentially the excitement is then that means we've got a new route to market, or we've got a new approach.
But my view would be better to do that than not do it, if that makes sense. You know, the fear of kind of not doing something because it's going to be so disruptive.
Cliche, you miss every shot
you don't take. Yeah. But it's true though. But we've done it, you know, and I think our business generally in the last 18 months has benefited from a more wider approach like that, which is kind of like, just speak to the customer, you know, sell the product, do that thing that, you know, previously it might have been, we're not sure, we're not ready, because it either works or fails miserably, but in either case, you kind of know and learn.
And you learn, don't you?
From that, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of you were cutting your teeth cold calling.
Yep.
Quick question, how many calls a day were you doing?
So I mean, don't forget, this was a time.
I feel an excuse because you should be saying...
No, do you know what? I'm just going to tell you how I got there. So you put a postcode into Google Maps, and then all the businesses in that postcode on Google Maps came up, and then you just write down the business. This is when LinkedIn wasn't really a thing as such. And then you just call the business and ask for the person, basically. And, you probably got, I don't know, you might do 60,
strong
70.
GDPR there.
Yeah, really, really strong, I mean, Wild West, wasn't it? But you might make 60, 70. But this is different because I felt I was selling a product, and I was selling a product at the time, which is not too dissimilar to kind of our capabilities that we have today from a wireless lease line perspective. I was selling wireless lease lines when Virgin and BT were still taking 6 months to install, and it was 3 or 4 grand ECCs was pretty common. We're selling a product that's delivered in 10 days and, it was a relatively easy sell at that time.
At what point then, kind of moving through that business, because you held a number of roles where you kind of owned the channel in terms of the partners, which would have been a first for them, being originally, I guess, a direct business that did maybe a few partners, but probably not in a wholesale way. So you were given that. Was that almost a, all right, Andy, you're doing all right, make something of this, prove yourself sort of opportunity? Obviously, maybe worded a bit better than that.
It definitely was, but I don't, and I'm not trying to play it down, but I was, again, the business I was in underpinned that approach, right? There was a couple of us cold calling. The business was doing really well. We decided, and our CEO decided at the time, right, we need to structure it, someone to run the wholesale, someone to run new business, someone to run account management, right, you three go and do that. There wasn't really a choice. It was that's what you're now doing. That's the structure we have today, right? So, that structure is really, I've taken that structure everywhere. It's not an alien structure in this industry, but those were the things I was picking up at the time where, I'm in my early 20s and someone's telling me this is why we need to structure a sales team. That's how you kind of get from a development perspective. But at that time, I was then with wholesale, so channel. We had probably, 100 partners that might have bought from us on a regular basis. When I left, we had about 600. So, we'd kind of really taken that on. But between those 2 points was like a lot of ups, load of downs, got loads of stuff right, made a load of mistakes. And that's obviously all benefited me kind of today as part of that.
So kind of going into when we talked with Johnny Ray, previous one of the defining things he spoke about was probably 2 or 3 people in his career that said that he would look back and go, they played a key role in my career.
Yeah.
Like they didn't need to do certain things, but they did. And obviously it triggered in terms of where you're saying now, and you're obviously downplaying it a little bit, which is your gift to do, obviously, but the CEO of where you were has obviously seen something to then empower you, because a small business, as much as you may have not felt you were involved in that decision, they're not going to make these decisions without thinking, is he the right person for that role? I'm going to take a chance and progress him,
But they're not. But at the same time, a lot of these businesses can't afford to do, they can't afford to bring someone else in. They can't afford to go and run a recruitment process. It's very much like that entrepreneurial kind of, these people have done well. We now need this. We're going to give those guys a chance, and
it's that chance to talk about. They've looked at you and gone
100%. And we try and do that now, right? We've looked at within our businesses to what extent we can do that, but it can go the other way. I remember at the previous place going through that, and I was running the UK channel still at the time, and people had come in and the business was going in slightly different directions. It wasn't a great time for us really at that point. And, I remember someone saying, we need an experienced channel director, and I'm sitting in the room thinking, well, I run the channel. So, I'm not quite sure where that's going. You couldn't do that nowadays, by the way, you'd be like HR through the roof, but you could tell that they were just wanting to bring someone in because the people who'd come in and not understood the business were like, we have to bring in an experienced, and that was 25 kind of, years,
we need someone.
This person's got us this far. We need someone to come in, and they did bring someone in. And that was a difficult time for me because it was kind of like you'd been through that whole journey and you felt like you were important in that success. And then you're kind of someone else is introduced into the mix. And that person didn't work out, and most of
rarely do.
The senior leadership at that time worked out. And within probably 2 years, that had kind of all been and gone. And it felt like from that point, my trajectory kind of continued on and upwards.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I think most people who've worked in either a startup and it's important, I think, for a lot of the owners of businesses, when you're kind of in that scale stage, it's that balance where the people that work for you have kind of got you there.
Yeah.
Do you invest your time and back them? And some businesses I see, they say, right, thank you, you've got us to this point. I'm going to get the Galacticos from XYZ to then, and it's that balance, isn't it?
But I think it's also job preservation, isn't it? Some people are in a role and they've got a role to fill. It's easier for them to say, I brought in this person, heavy hitter, absolute bollocks, heavy hitter, rock star, all the terms, like they've done this at this industry, and it's safer for them to say.
Have you ever hired a rock star?
I think you were leaning on to you, but I didn't hire you, and also you're not a rock star. But
correct.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Yeah, not looking like that anyway. I think you can get it wrong, and that's because someone needs to go, well, I need, I've had the investment, I need to, best of breed, and I need to bring all these people in, and it's not wrong to bring people in externally. You absolutely need to do that, but you also got to look internally to kind of the people that's available, and are they the right fit? Because it's as much about knowing that business. Where you've seen things get drastically wrong is someone comes in and they don't really understand enough about what the business is doing in a key role, where it can kind of stunt that growth a little bit when someone else could just come in and pick up the mantle and give them a chance.
We were kind of going logically, but there's a question that's popped into my head, which is I just genuinely want to know the answer to. So we're just going to ask it. So as a chief revenue officer, now for my dad who'll be listening, because I told him about this, he said he's old school sales director, man and boy, kind of retired now, well, semi-retired. And he said, what is a chief revenue officer?
Yeah.
And I said, it's a sales director, but also in charge of marketing. So he owns all of the output in terms of the strategy, sales strategy, marketing strategy. The whole thing sits under him. So he's got control of that. It's not kind of that conflict that you sometimes see. And he's like, that makes a lot of sense why they should have that. I wish I'd had that. He doesn't talk like that.
Yeah.
So when you're coming into that position, you've got the responsibility for a lot of different facets. And sitting below that, just to mention, you might have direct salespeople, account management, channel sales, maybe a lead generation, and there's probably a few others in there that are all going in different directions. When you come into a business, or if you came into business, how do you set about understanding it and then implementing what you think are the right ways?
Yeah, I mean, just on the chief revenue officer, I can't say I'm particularly enamored with that job title. Like,
what title would you like?
Well, I'm not really bothered, if I'm being honest, but like, it's kind of, I remember the first time I remember sending an email to a customer and I was like, my job title just says revenue in it. Like, I was like that. If I was the customer, I'd be a bit like, is it just about, anyway, but that was just my thinking at the time. And it is what it is, right? It's an industry standard term now. And, it's part of it, but I think it's not necessarily about marketing. It's about the fact that there's an end-to-end kind of process within a business to grow the revenue and keep the revenue, and someone is kind of sat above accountable for it, which I read something that was like the average CRO role is like 16 months, something like that.
Well, it's like a Premier League football manager.
It is,
isn't
yeah.
It, really?
So I think I'm in month 18. So, kind of hopefully just breaking through the back of that. But because you do, you up there, I guess, to a point when things are going well, but then also when things are not going well, you're the first person that, and that's the thing with that job title, right? But it is what it is.
It's almost like when you look at a business, and I'd be interested what you think of this, it's almost like you look at it and you go, it's a fantastic property. It's great, but it needs some investment in here. Not sure why that extension's there. And, you look at it and you go, actually, the framework of it is substantial.
If you look at, and, you and I speak to our partners today and suppliers today who have gone through investment and look like they're about to make similar types of mistakes that we thought Telcom had made prior. And, we're quite vocal about that, right? Just because you have 2 salespeople that do $5,000 a month each, having 10 doesn't guarantee you 50 grand, and I think that's on the small side, right? We know businesses getting 20, 30, 40 salespeople because it's just like, we need to go.
Do you think in the channel, in terms of that approach, because we're still seeing it now with businesses with significant capital, from a sales approach, is as binary as each salesperson would do this. Yeah. Do you think there's a lack of, or could there be more understanding of the sales process, the things that go into build sales?
Well, if you think about, you talked about the chief revenue officer. I think this was really important when, going back again 18 months, it was like, you just need to create an environment where people can earn money, number one, and then, can they progress and can they have a laugh, in kind of disproportionate measures probably, but those were the 3 key areas. And, if you've got people that can't earn because you've got too many salespeople, you haven't got enough mouths to feed, they haven't got the leads, it's kind of, they haven't got the sales process to support it, they haven't got the pre-sales process, they haven't got the right product information, they haven't got the right delivery process. It's like there's a million things that you can do in the business before you just go, we need more salespeople.
And it's a really, because I've seen it in the industry where bigger businesses, but then I also see it with a lot of resellers, because you can sync your business potentially as a reseller in channel where you hire a big hitter salesperson and they don't produce, or you hire a salesperson but the actual strategy is not there to support that salesperson. So it's almost a hide into nothing. And it's interesting where you're talking in terms of the culture and the environment for the salespeople, be it opportunity creation, be it earning cash and all those things, and difficult decisions have to be made to get there. But I think it's worth noting that businesses, as they do that trajectory, have that sort of sales appreciation. It isn't just a
it's hard. It's a hard slog, right, to sell anything now, especially in you think about our industry. Obviously, we Elevate wholesale from wholesale perspective. Elevate has some direct elements of it as well that have different nuances, but it's hard to sell anything. So it's kind of like,
it definitely is for me, as you know.
Well,
luckily, so far
you've done obviously we had the better who'd sell first within wholesale.
Yeah, we'll just touch on that if you want. So I was 2 weeks in, just had surgery. Just saying, but
is that the excuse?
Caveat. You have to have the excuses straight away. It's the key. And we just joined. So you're 2 weeks before. You're understanding the business. You've got a black book of a few contacts. I know a few people. So let's change it up. I think, was it my idea or your idea? Probably yours.
Canberra.
20 quid bet, first partner order. Big shout out to Alex at Metratech who secured that. But the really interesting bit was, you're a chief revenue officer, you've been successful in your career. I'm thinking, he's not going to ask for 20 quid. It's just the kudos. You asked for the 20
Definitely
quid.
asked for 20 quid. You made the bet. I mean, you got
and I learned a lot there.
You got to pay up. Well, that was the start of it.
It was the start. I did the photos. So.
But the key thing with that, I'd
say it, you're going to do it.
Yeah, well, but also it's kind of, for me, that was about just start. We've got to work with someone. It's not like we were starting from scratch. We had all the capabilities to underpin and offer a good service, but we could have sat there for ages and gone, are we sure we got the right pricing? Are we sure we got the right marketing? Are we sure we got that? You just have to start doing something. And, you think about Elevate Wholesale in particular, we've always said that there's certain things that would happen that then we'd be like, right, let's go. We need that next person. We could have just gone, Will, you've come on board. There's 5 salespeople there, kind of crack on. But that's just not the right thing to do from a cost perspective. But also, we didn't really have, everything needs to kind of knit together to get there. And, every time we've reached a crucial, someone hits a number or we've got a certain amount of partners, we then push the button for the growth on that, which is obviously working pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. So we kind of came into that environment, March, you've got this grounding in terms of the roles you've done, sales director, chief revenue, working for a startup, join Telcom as it was. At what point over the kind of your time with the last 15 months did you think, this name's not working, the branding's not working, I'm not comfortable with how we're positioning to market?
So I remember, I mean, there's a load of different things.
Let's have the top three.
So I remember I'd been here 4 months, 5 months, and I was speaking to a guy pretty well known in the industry, and I mentioned something about Telcom, and he said, "Yeah, you guys have got more brands and customers, haven't you?" And I was like, "He's fucking right there." Like you could just tell that was his perception, and I get on with him, by the way. So it wasn't he's saying it in jest.
It's a legitimate observation.
That's view, isn't it? And I think,
and if he's thinking it
is exactly. And there was a byproduct of within Telcom at the time, because very entrepreneurial business, spinning loads of different plates, company popping up. Some of it's turned out to be really successful with different parts of the group, but you could just tell as you're doing that. And then they'd obviously had a lot of different people running the marketing team, running the sales team. Not necessarily the teams, but the kind of owning that strategy. You could just tell that it was kind of like starting to get arms and legs and becoming quite kind of convoluted. And we did that again, right? I think when we obviously had Telcom wholesale, we bought Luminet, who had their own wholesale. We had our Giga Britain initiative that, we really liked and loved and stood behind that as a brand. And that kind of grew arms and legs as well. And before you know it, you kind of got, are you Telcom, are you Luminet wholesale, are you Telcom at wholesale, are you Giga Britain? And it was just it was very clear to me, and you and other people internally, it was like, we've just got to do something about this. And that's just one of the reasons, right? I mean, if you search for Telcom, they didn't even appear. It's like on Google, it doesn't show up. I mean, that for me, you're leaving a meeting, someone searches for you, you can't find you. It's like absolutely
I remember we went to a networking event in London with a partner, and I was watching you, and which sounds a bit seedy, but you were chatting to someone, and it was the usual, where'd you work, Andy? Oh, I'm chief revenue at Telcom. And I saw him get his phone out and Google it. And then I saw your face, and then surprisingly we were at the bar, and you went, distinctly remember you saying, got to change that name. Got to change that name, because he was coming up with the South African Telcom.
And I think it's important, and these are all the reasons. I mean, these are just the negative reasons why I think, like Telcom and things like that, we had to change it. The positive reasons is the reason why we've chosen, Elevate and Elevate Wholesale, right? It's our business is changing. We're talking about, we have this concept of ground to cloud technology partner, which I absolutely love. I think that just massively summarizes our capabilities in terms of, abilities to dig the fiber, in-house LAN, Wi-Fi, cloud security.
Well, that was going to be one of my last questions really on your sort of view of the industry. So what a lot of people don't know is a swear word to you, or a phrase you hate, is altnet.
Yeah.
Now, in the market, there are a lot of altnets in and obviously their kind of go-to-market in strategy. Access to cash is more difficult now than the glory days, if you like, kind of pre-COVID, around COVID. For a business transitioning from altnet, if you like, over, what are the sort of benefits that you see for Elevate or other companies out there that are potentially going, look, we did X, but we have this other capability, and moving into that different arena? I think
my view on altnet, I mean, it's got to be relevant to the type of business, right? There are a lot of altnets out there, and there are a lot of successful altnets out there, and altnet is the absolute perfect description for them as an organization, right? I just think when that term was used about us, and we ourselves used it, we were massively downplaying our capabilities, and I forget the kind of the world has changed. You're not valued on the amount of doors you've passed anymore, right? We are all in the real world now. We're all in the real world, and that's about customers' revenue and profit ultimately. So if you look at, for me, we needed something, and I've been talking about not calling us an altnet for 12 months, right? Way before the rebrand. because, we're sat here, we've got 60, 70 plus of our own engineers, we can dig our own fiber, all altnet-ish type capabilities, but then, we can provide internal infrastructure, we can provide managed services from a LAN and Wi-Fi perspective, we can provide managed security, the capabilities, our own wireless footprint, the capabilities are so...
Your frustration would have been altnet, you're just doing the connectivity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Customers just think that, and actually, as well as the sort of the negatives in terms of the telecom side, Elevate enables or signifies that real move to say, not just this part, we do more, and you've kind of evolved that strategy over the sort of...
Well, exactly. For us, it's about, we look at, if you look at it, seamless, secure, intelligent networks, right? For us, it's like, yes, we can provide a circuit to a customer's office if that is the requirement through our partner, but then we can always provide the 100-site managed network if that is also the requirement. The capabilities are so far and beyond. And personally, for me, I just don't see, again, it's just my view of it, but I don't see how an IT director or someone in that space trusts an altnet with, certain things from a managed service and managed network perspective.
Why do you think that?
I don't know. I just think this is my view. I just don't think altnet, I think it pigeonholes an organization's capabilities, but some businesses are just altnets and they work fine and that is fantastic. Like, that it's not a bad word. It was a bad word for us in terms of the capabilities. And I think our shift from that pre-rebrand has massively helped us in our growth because, we're not just, a lot of what we do now is that kind of cross.
There's a lot of partners and resellers out there that are doing similar shifts. They're moving into that sort of MSP space where they're offering security and they're looking to increase the value in conjunction with connectivity. And it's a move that I thought more of altnets would be looking at. And I think it's quite interesting how you've kind of zeroed in on that quite early, because it can be difficult in a connectivity business because everybody thinks...
Well, they do, but at the same time...
in a certain way.
At the same time, if you're going to be an altnet, you have to have the coverage and the network and the kind of, not lack of competition, but you have to have that value point that, that kind of justifies that quite singular approach. With us, we've got 5 or 6 kind of hyper cities now, our own network, London's our own network, but other people are there.
Do you think, though, part of the rebranding and the focus on the different capabilities that you've done, was that partly obviously because you've seen the way the market's going, but is that partly from a personal point of view where you kind of look at it going, I'm really finding this part a little bit boring in terms of...
It's just a bit stale, isn't it? We talked about this podcast, right? It's like everyone's doing podcasts. You got to do something different, and we want to talk about things differently. And for us, it's not like, come on, this is how good our product is. For us, it's about, we talked about it, like relationships and people is everything. And we started wholesale purely through the relationships that you and I had. And, when we look to bring people in to support that, and we have done recently, with Tegan joining us, when you look at people joining, for us, it's about not necessarily can they bring relationships, that's always nice, but are they in a position... You
should never bring relationships with
absolutely,
you.
Sorry, that's absolutely not an important part of our criteria.
We'd never do that.
Exactly. But the point is more, can they create relationships? Because if it is a relatively dull kind of industry, the people you have a better relationship with will typically win, right? And I think if you look at our suppliers, we've always been quite vocal of our relationships with the Skies and the Virgins of the world. And we don't stand behind that. And at no point do we kind of we do obviously badge it as our service, but we're very open about who the underlying supplier is, because why would you not be? We're kind of leveraging the fact that we work with them. But you and I in particular have good relationships with the people that work there, because if we didn't, I don't think that we'd be as successful as we did. And so you just got to try and make it a bit more entertaining and fun in your own way, I suppose.
What are the 3 lessons you've learned in that bit? Because I think it's always interesting for people watching this to go, do you know what? That's kind of triggered something for me.
I think if I had to boil the last 19 months, whatever it is, in simplicity has got to be number one. You know, it was so clear that things were overly convoluted, 100%. And I've seen it in other businesses where you layer on process and people and technology and structure and acquisitions, and before you know it, people's kind of heads are on a swivel, and you know, you've just got to make this thing as simple as possible. And that is everything, right? Proposition, you know, if you're talking sales, commission schemes, structures, like rules of engagement, it just got to be really clear for everyone that this is what I'm doing, this is how I earn. If this happens, then that is the kind of repercussion, or, you know, so that was important. I guess number two is just trying to make things happen. You know, we talked about that in wholesale, but we've seen that outside of our business, where you just got to kind of action drives data, right? And information. You just got to do stuff that it might work, it might not work, but you know, if it doesn't work, stop it. Forwards. Yeah, but just make sure you're moving forward. And I guess the third thing, which I think we've definitely seen the benefit of, is the cultural. You know, I think if you can get those things right first, then you know, it's a decent foundation to build on from there.
Which three guests would you pick? And why?
Which three guests I pick and why? So this is really random, but I'm going to say it just because it was a big part of my childhood. So I remember growing up, I was like a big wrestling fan. You know, everyone used to watch. Everyone used to watch wrestling. And there's
interesting in the news at the minute.
Well, exactly, yeah. And there's also there's one on Netflix, Mr. McMahon documentary, which I've literally just finished watching, which is why this has come back to my head. But I remember when I was in primary school, and it's like, who's the person you most admire? And everyone's like, my dad, you know, my mum, my grandma. And I put X-Pac, as in like D-Generation X. So I think, just from a purely kind of like childhood memory, I'd have him at the table. I don't think I'd have Fergie.
High protein meal.
I don't think I'd have Fergie. Elon Musk. Just because I find him massively entertaining.
So Generation
X-Pac.
Yeah. Elon Musk.
Really mixed.
Yeah.
Really mixed bag.
It's an interesting table so far.
Yeah. And then finally, who would I go for? Gary Neville randomly. Is that weird? I'm just thinking about. I'm trying to apply it.
You're trying to apply.
United fan, you know, Manchester.
Shoehorn some business in.
You know, I think there's something in
you're
there.
Trying to pull it back to
he's typically, you know, he could.
You're trying to hit a few marks with one.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there's probably a bunch of other people. Who's your three?
Andy Booth, the greatest footballer there's ever been. I would have Winston Churchill.
How many goals for Huddersfield?
We don't measure that as a success benchmark. Winston Churchill. And being really, really weird, I would say Lord Wellington.
Okay.
You weren't expecting that, were you?
I was not.
But I grew up watching Sharp. So I've learned the Battle of Waterloo.
Sean Bean.
Yeah. Right. And I read all the books, and I've always been obsessed with Wellington and his military stuff. It's a different side to me you weren't expecting.
I wasn't. Yeah.
But yeah, Winston Churchill, Wellington, and Andy Booth.
Nice.
And it would be, I would feel very inadequate with all of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it would be great.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
for your time.
Thank you. It was enjoyable.
There'll be a replacement here in a few weeks doing this.
So we're recruiting for a new head of
Elevate Wholesale needed. I'm available. Very reasonable. Obviously, don't spend money on clothes. So thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I think one of the more interesting career journeys, a lot of takeouts from Andy in terms of where he started to where he is now. Very interesting in terms of structure and approaching businesses, but then also highlight for me working in Malia and making a success of that. So thank you very much. If you're a fan of podcasts that are not boring, not advertising, not just product related, and you want something that you actually adds value, please like and subscribe. In the comment section, any feedback's appreciated, but please support our pod. And if you want to contact me, please reach out to me. You'll see me on LinkedIn under Will Goodall with a lovely picture of my fat face. Thank you. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.